All right. Manchester by the Sea came out first year we were doing The Ringer. An awesome movie year.
Yeah.
La La Land, Moonlight, and this. I think either one of those could have won in other years and probably did some more Oscar stuff. Sean's going to hate that I did this, but I made a list of best 21st century movies that didn't win Best Picture.
Okay.
But also have some sort of pop culture kind of tale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Brokeback, There Will Be Blood, The Dark Knight, Social Network, Wolf of Wall Street, La La Land, Manchester by the Sea, Get Out, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Feels like the right kind of list.
Those
Maybe
are
there's
really good picks.
one or two left,
Make
but
the argument that those are like the best movies of the
Right.
That
century.
year,
yeah, I was looking because some people, especially after the first 2 decades, did the 21st century list. Now we're going to head toward the quarter of the century. I'm sure there's going to be some more lists for that. And Manchester by the Sea will be on it. Now, the question is, why is this on the rewatchables? I think the thing we want to do with this is pick rewatchable movies. It's not obviously not rewatchable like Anchorman, but there's a difference between a movie like this and a movie like $1 Million Baby that I see once that I never want to see again. This movie has been on cable and I'm like, man, I never wanted to see that movie again, but God damn, this is a good movie. And you start getting sucked into scenes. This is not a typical rewatchable,
Yeah,
right,
but
Sierra?
it's not because of like the floor is really low. There is no floor. You're in hell.
Yeah.
But you know what? This movie's pretty fucking funny. And all the stuff between Patrick and Lee and like, you need a fucking spaceship to get there in 90 minutes. Like all
Yeah.
the banter, like there's a lot of levity in this movie. And I think that it has these qualities that aren't dissimilar from like why we like Good Will Hunting, why we like some of these like human dramas specifically to come out of the Damon Affleck axis. That kind of, they're there. It's just that you're also going to be confronted with the most harrowing moments you could possibly imagine for yourself.
I think there's a cinematic reason to revisit it too, because the movie is so emotionally overwhelming that when you see it for the first time, you feel pulverized, right? It's like so powerful and so sad and so deep. But your instinct is to be like, I never want to watch that again, right? I don't want to be put in a position to feel that badly. But if you give it another try, you'll definitely hear that humor. But just as a filmmaker, Lonergan is really interesting and really clever and does a lot of things that I definitely did not pick up on the first time. I probably had some preconceived notions about the playwright turned filmmaker and like not necessarily thinking that they're as great visually as I would want them to be. Totally wrong about that watching it this time around. Also, I mean, a lot of the best rewatchables movies are just about movies with great performances. And this movie has like 9 great performances. Everybody who's in this movie is at their best. This is the best they've ever been. So I feel like just going back to see Lucas Hedges at the beginning, Michelle Williams right at her peak, Casey Affleck never better. Like
Kyle
it's worth
Chandler
it.
dealing. Yeah.
Coach Taylor.
Gretchen Mol redemption arc.
That's right.
You know?
She's back.
Really, really good in this. Would you do that Oscar over again on a redo? Moonlight ended up winning. We thought La La Land won for 5 minutes. And I wonder, like 20 years from now, which one of those 3 has the biggest tail. Because sometimes it might take 2 decades for us to even figure that out.
I think Moonlight is now going to be recognized as the movie that led to this radical change in what the Best Picture winner is.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Best Picture winner, I think I might have written this the night that it happened on The Ringer, but there had basically never been a movie like that had won Best Picture before. So I think even just setting aside how great that movie is, just on that, it's going to remain impactful. But Manchester by the Sea, it's like kind of a perfect 4th place finisher in the Oscars because it's like the movie that a lot of people have the biggest emotional relationship to. La La Land is great. It was never my favorite. It's kind of my least favorite of the Chazelle movies, honestly.
Yeah.
It was a big swing.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting and fun to watch. I feel the same way about Moonlight. I don't know how it's going to play out, but 3 classics. We always talk about, oh man, another crappy movie year. That was a really, really, really great movie year.
I think that also like this film is an interesting, was this the first Amazon film? Was this the first?
Yeah.
You know,
yes,
and
they acquired it out of Sundance, yeah.
They bought it for $10
the
million
fact that it's
and
like
it made way more.
steadily been available on Amazon since it came out basically is it's like one of those Netflix things where it's like, oh, that movie's always looking at me like in the corner of like recommended movies on my streaming service. That, and I think ironically, there's been some memes to come out of this movie that have made it like kind of extend its lifespan a little bit, although very darkly. And yeah, I think it has legs.
grief is a concept that's been in a bunch of great movies, and I don't think maybe ever nailed as hard as it is in this one. Lonergan, he's going for the theme of basically, how do you keep going if something so horrible happens to you that there's no coming back? What's your life like 5 years later? What's your life like 7 years later? How do you come back from the uncomebackable?
Yeah.
So he was saying, he's had a couple quotes when the movie came out. You can't get through life without something happening to you that you can't stand. And there's nothing wrong with putting that in a story. And then he said, some people can't get over something major that's happened to them at all. So why can't they have a movie too? It's an interesting way to think about it. What other movies are like this where
all three of his movies are like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the core theme of his movies.
Yeah.
You know, like You Can Count on Me and Margaret and this movie are all about something absolutely awful and mortal happening to someone and them trying to figure out how to keep going. Like, and You Can Count on Me, it's a brother and a sister who lose their parents at a very young age. And the movie fast forwards 30 years in the future, and it's just like, we're not over this. Like, we're not ready to cope with what happened to us. In Margaret, it's just a young woman watching a woman get hit by a bus and feeling like she was participating somehow in this accident that she witnessed, and then her inability to kind of get over what she saw transpire. And this movie is the same thing. I mean, this movie is maybe the worst thing that can happen to a person. Like in the Rewatchables history, like, is there a worse thing that has happened to a character?
Number one. I agree.
But he just seems fascinated by that, and I think that those are like the highest dramatic stakes.
It's this, and then it's Christian Harris not being able to get reunited with Ashley Judd, I think.
That's a big one, yeah.
Pulling away, asking for directions, need to get some bread.
That's the true heartbreak, yeah.
So he's directed 3 movies, and all 3 of them are movies like you stumble out of the theater at the end of it. You Can Count on Me has been on the Rewatchables list for a while because it's basically the Ruffalo breakout.
Yeah.
And it's Laura Linney just establishing herself as one of the signature actors of the last, 25 years.
So his movies tend to take a long time to write and for them to come out. And with Margaret, obviously went through post-production hell with like whether it was his cut or not, and he finally got his version out. But there's something that happens with that context where like the films have like they've been marinating for a while. Like even the story of the making of this movie, where it's basically an idea that Krasinski and Damon bring to him, and then he takes like, according to Damon, 6 years before it comes out. He's working on this, he's tinkering it, and I think that's the other thing what makes it a rewatchable is when you go back and watch this film, for as lived in and human and almost like not cinema verite, but like it feels very much like real life. Every single line actually has something to do with the major themes of the film. You know, like almost every single throwaway seems to actually, you can chart how it comes back to what's this movie about? Why is this person saying this? And you can tell that even though it was a compressed shooting schedule and it was probably very difficult, it was like everything about this movie has been thought through. And that gives it an extra weight, I think, beyond even what happens in the film. Was it on your radar? Like, I don't remember talking with you guys about this movie when it came out, even though we were together every day. Like, I don't know. I think I just saw it in the theaters, or maybe I went to a screening, was like crushed by it. And then I wasn't like, hey, you got to see Manchester by the Sea, Bill. It'll really ruin your weekend. Did you see it in the theaters?
I saw it in the theater. I really liked You Can Count on Me. And for some reason, that became a rewatchable for me, even though it's not like, doesn't have a lot of the typical DNA. And just was really interested in that director, but also the fact that Damon was so passionate about it, and then stepping on Casting What Ifs was supposed to be the lead, and then did The Martian instead, and had this sliding doors moment with it. We'll talk about that later about what is this movie with Damon. So it was on my radar. Plus Manchester by the Sea, like, North Shore. It's between Beverly and Gloucester. Just an interesting place to set a movie. And I always like Casey Affleck. Mm-hmm. He had, going through his runs, like he's the 90s kid actor, he's in To Die For, Good Will Hunting. He has that little run, but we don't really think anything's going to happen. Then he's in all the Ocean's 11, 12, 13. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then he just seems like he's going to be Ben Affleck's brother, who's kind of fun to have in a movie. And then in 2007, puts out Gone Baby Gone and the Assassination of Jesse James, which Chris Ryan has been pushing for a rewatchable for I think Gone 3 years.
Baby Gone is almost too rock bottom for you.
Yeah, I mean, or maybe it'll turn up in Rock Bottom month. Who knows?
It is on the training wheels for Manchester by the Sea.
Yes.
Gone Baby Gone, yeah.
So he's got that, and we're all going, oh, this guy's going to be a real guy now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then it kind of goes sideways again. He does that weird Joaquin Phoenix movie.
A
He
lot of
does
personal stuff comes out of that.
Killer
Yeah.
Inside Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some personal stuff that we'll talk about later. He's all of a sudden he's in like Tower Heist, and it seemed like he'd kind of missed his moment. And then Manchester gives, one of the best actor performances, I think, of the decade. And whether Damon could have done it, I think, is a really, really interesting debate, because you could look big picture at Damon and say, he never had a movie like this. Like Good Will Hunting was probably the closest, but he never had his best actor movie. The Martian might
I
have
think
been.
Stillwater was like kind of his version of making Manchester in some ways. Like it was almost like the makeup movie.
Right.
Yeah. Where that's like a really withdrawn character that's kind of like emotionally
Yeah, it's a guy who's like,
reserved.
I'm a working class guy who's trying to like, I can't quite articulate. I'm not going to have like these big speeches or anything like that. Everything has to be through action and gesture and what I don't say. And I love that movie, but I know it kind of had mixed reviews.
Damon is just such a charisma machine. It's so
Yeah.
hard, like on screen, you're just waiting for him to crack a joke or be the most charming guy. Or even when he's playing like a doofus in the Ocean's movies, he's still like, you're magnetized to him. And Lee is trying to disappear, like he's trying to be invisible in the world. So it's hard to imagine. I mean, we'll talk about it more later, but it is hard to imagine. But you're right that he was really vocal about the movie for a long time, Damon. And I know it originated with him and Krasinski talking, but that I guess he's been friends with Lonergan for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
He believed in him like about as much as a famous actor could believe in a director. Like, and Lonergan's going through money problems, and Damon's just like, we came up with this idea, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Gave him 3
Didn't
years
Damon
to work
also
on
just
it.
like, what can I do to fund Margaret? Like,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's in it,
Yeah.
and he pushed hard because it's a weird thing too with Lonergan because he shot Margaret in 2005. It goes through 6 years of lawsuit issues,
and then kind of ruins his life.
I mean,
It's a little like what we talked about with Paul Brickman with Risky
Yeah.
Business, where he had such a traumatic experience, he almost couldn't bounce back
And
from
he
it.
talks about Manchester by the Sea, and like I think a lot of people were asking him questions on the promo run where it's like, so how fucked up was this one?
Yeah.
And he's like, honestly, great. I knew that Matt Damon wanted me to write this movie and wasn't going to start noting it and changing all of my words and changing what the movie was about. And we made it in 30 days and I got to cut it, it doesn't feel like this was ever in turmoil like that.
I was reading an interview with him about the 20th anniversary of You Can Count on Me that was really interesting. And he talked about how on You Can Count on Me, which is a beautiful and really interesting movie, but is very unorthodox, like you were saying, and has like a very unorthodox ending and just feels way more like a 70s movie.
Yeah.
And
That's a good call.
He had Final Cut, and then a new production company came in and they were like, you can't have Final Cut if you want this money from us. So he got Martin Scorsese to come on as an executive producer. This is before Martin Scorsese did this all the time. And he was like, I'm going to bring Scorsese in, but he gets Final Cut. And he did that to protect himself.
Yeah.
So it's ironic that the guy who was savvy enough after years as a playwright to bring in like a powerful person to protect him still got caught up in this bullshit on Margaret. And that it clearly
Is Margaret Miramax?
I don't remember which studio it was, but there was one particular producer who was the one who was really up against him in this. And it wasn't Harvey Weinstein.
I think it's Dan Gilbert's brother.
I think it was. It was Dan Gilbert's brother. And that took out like 11 years of movies for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he put out one movie between You Can Count on Me and Manchester by the Sea, and they're basically two decades apart. So it's a
recurring theme of this podcast where you just wonder what the fuck happened to
these
entire
movies are hard to
decades
get
of
off the ground,
careers.
man.
Yeah,
These movies are hard to do.
Like Paul Brickman didn't work again after Risky Business for what was it, like 7 years?
Yeah, they did another.
And he was the
Abbott
hottest
script. Yeah.
director in Hollywood for 4 months.
It's really crazy.
It's almost like, well, I'll wait till we go to casting what ifs because I have some questions about that.
Who is Lonergan if you're looking at the last 50 years? Who is he? Who's swimming in his pool?
Well, in terms of like going from stage to screen, you could go with Mamet or Tom Stoppard, somebody like that.
Mamet is definitely a big influence
and
on
Lonergan
him.
does do some rewrite work and some Hollywood stuff. To
the person
bills.
that's most familiar to me is Alexander Payne, where it's like writer-director, underrated as a filmmaker, very celebrated as a writer. Alexander Payne also does a lot of script work, does script doctoring. Lonergan's like a legendary script doctor.
So you think that's how he is making money, is the script doctor stuff,
I
the
think so.
year to year?
Yeah. I think he's the guy who's like, you have 30 days to fix this movie and write good jokes. And that's something that he's really good at. Because like even his really, really sad movies are pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, he's also, I just don't have a feel for him because he's also the guy who's like, yeah, I'm going to put myself in this as the guy who sarcastically says, hey, nice parenting.
Nice fucking
He has a
parent.
big part in You Can Count on Me. He plays the priest, you know, and he's in that movie a lot. And he's not a bad actor.
He's
but
in Margaret?
He must have a cameo of some kind.
Yeah.
I didn't rewatch Margaret before this.
Where are the
like
movie
4
nerds
hours
with
long.
Margaret right now?
It's that perfect thing where because it was lost for so long and people were dying to see it, as soon as it came out, people were like, masterpiece. Like you have to like protect the artist and protect it. I remember really, really loving it when I saw it, but it is much more unusual and harder to penetrate than the 2 movies in between.
You a fan?
Margaret? Yeah, but similar to what Sean was saying, I remember did you have the DVD of the extended cut? And it started getting passed around. So I remember watching his copy and it was like, we gotta love this. Because this is like a secret movie that we got, and we have to like really.
Yeah. But now the extended cut, you can get it.
Yeah, you can get it now. You just couldn't see it for a long, long time. It's a beautiful movie, but it is a bit more like emotionally abstract, I think, than like Manchester by the Sea, which is it's like a very direct, clear American tragedy.
This movie also has Michelle Williams in it, who completed her trifecta of damaged spouses in movies, starting with Brokeback, going to Blue Valentine, and then Manchester. It's really the trifecta, CR.
She may have less screen time in this movie than Hopkins does in Silence of the Lambs.
She does. She's
has
12 minutes.
As big of an impact. You know, like I would argue up there with the greatest one scene performances we've certainly ever talked about. I'm not getting into all time, but just like, and she's so good the night of the fire too. Like when she's just Randy and is like, you fucking pinheads everybody's gotta go home. Like she's so like one scene, you're like, I know who this person is. And she's so different after it, you know?
It's funny that she came back for more though, after that double bill that you're talking about. And she was like, I'm gonna play one more sad wife.
More time.
I got one more sad wife in me.
5 Oscar nominations for her, 3 best and 2 supporting.
Still hasn't won. I think
still hasn't won.
She would have won if she went in supporting The Year the Fabelmans came out. Yeah. I think so.
Also, the category was loaded this year because she was going against Viola Davis in Fences for Best Supporting this year.
She was not going to win that one.
Lonergan won for Original Screenplay and beat La La Land. And then Affleck won for Best Actor, which he was favored. He was winning all the awards.
Everything. Yeah.
There was some stuff percolating about him that started to overshadow. And then really the next year at the Oscars when he was supposed to present, that was Me Too was in full effect by then. And then he ended up bowing out. And that became a little piece of the legacy of this movie, that he was starting to go through stuff off the screen instead of this just being his moment. His career's never, you know, from a movie standpoint, his career is not recovered from that.
I think he's making a movie with Damon now for Apple.
I mean, he was in Oppenheimer. And he's one of the best parts of Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
So he's not like been excommunicated or anything like that. But you're right. You'd think after a performance like this and a win like that, under normal circumstances, you would go on to be doing bigger and bigger things. And he was in the wilderness a little bit.
Got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actress. Lucas Hedges, who was in this and then mid-90s, one of my son's favorite movies. And has been doing stage the last couple of years, but
I saw him in a theater version of Brokeback Mountain in London.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was one of those up as we head into the 2020s. I think he would have been on that like Chalamet list, right? Of like who are going to be the biggest up and coming actors in their 20s of the 2020s. But I'm not positive he wants it.
He apparently is in this movie Shirley that came out on Netflix on Friday about Shirley Chisholm. But that's the first movie he's made in 5 years. So he's up to other stuff right now.
You have Lucas Hedges thoughts, or should we move on?
When seeing him in Brokeback, I was like, this guy can have it whenever he wants it, but obviously he just is not doing it right now. Yeah,
we have a casting what ifs with him. That's pretty good. So $9 million budget, made $79 million. Amazon paid 10, and all the research on this movie was like they were scrapping it together, just trying to get through the shoot. There's a thing we'll talk about later. This is other ending that they wanted that they couldn't get done. And then ironically, the movie ended up making 9 times as much as they thought.
Yeah. I love the stories about the making of this movie where it's like very old school. Like they're basically in a race to finish it before winter's over. Cause like if winter is over in Massachusetts. It's a completely different place.
Yeah.
So they have to like get through the shoot of the winter stuff before spring comes. It's just very like, that's how they used to have to make movies.
Right.
This is a really interesting thing though. Like I wrote a story about independent movies when this movie came out, or in early 2017 when the Oscar race was starting to happen.
Because things were starting to flip with the streamers.
This is right when Amazon and Netflix really came in. And I talked to Chris Moore, who's one of the producers of the show, who's a longtime Affleck and Damon producer. And he said, there's a window right now where they're all trying to fill up, but at some point Amazon will have enough titles and all they'll care about are the big ones that are coming up. And if you're a subscriber of Prime, which is what they care about, do you care if they have 50,000 titles or 6 million? As long as you get what you want out of the 50,000, what are you going to do with the other 5 million titles, right? They're just going to sit there. So like even at this time, those guys were like, let's just try to get this in while we can. You know, like while there's a moment to get a movie like this made, let's just try to get it made.
You could argue that they hit them up again for air, where they're just like, we have this new model. Let's see if anybody will fund it.
Right.
And they did that with air, where it was like, we want to, everybody here has equity in the movie.
Well, sometimes try to shy away from movies that came out in the last 10 years because I think sometimes you need some distance. We need some research. We need some half-assed research to come out that we don't know whether we believe or not. And a lot of times you just kind of need to marinate with the movie, and that can change the more times it pops on, the more times, some of the actors or the directors that are involved in the movie, their lives might change. And then it feels like after 12, 15 years, feels like about a short enough time. This one feels different. This feels like there was so much written about it and discussed when it came out. It's a certain type of movie that's definitely the beginning of some sort of era. And it's also, I think, has two of the saddest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And it's one of those things where you're just like, you almost can't function after you.
So I watched this on a plane last night. And you know what they say about like the oxygen makes it like, and I was a fucking mess, like an absolute embarrassment. There's a guy reading Dune next to me, and he just kept looking over at me because it's like, I can't beat it. I'm like, you fucking can't beat it. Don't you fucking get it, Patty?
I was thinking about this when you were asking about other movies that are like this. Like we did Ordinary People, right? That's a really sad movie. It's a really tragic movie in some ways, but it's kind of the inverse of movies like that because I feel like all the Lonergan movies, they don't actually ever really have the conversation about what's happened. Yeah. Right? They're like about how in real life, you don't sit down with your brother or your wife and say like, so on Tuesday, my mom died. Yeah. And then on Wednesday, I woke up and I was in pain. Like life doesn't work that way. Like everything is kind of understood in the casual way we go about our lives. This is one of the few movies where like Lee obviously feels everything. Yeah. But he is not comfortable with and probably was not raised to be able to talk about everything. So like all the time when you're watching this movie, with these two rare exceptions, I think, that you're talking about, he kind of like cuts out of the scene before the conversation starts to happen. Yeah. Or like he moves on to something with a totally different energy. Like, even in the moment when that confrontation between Michelle Williams' character and Casey Affleck's character at the end of the movie, which is like, that's one of the movie scenes of the 21st century. It's so powerful. It goes right to him getting in a bar fight. It's like, it's just immediately like,
great bar fight.
Get your energy out.
You looking at me?
So, like all that stuff is purposeful too. Like it's all correlated, connected action.
I think that's what Lonergan cares about is there's baggage in the room, but the characters don't know how to address it. And they're just kind of stumbling around it and trying to talk about it. But they're just not actually saying what they need to say about it. It's weird. I feel like there are some rewatchable movies that are super sad that in a way is kind of the appeal of the movie. Sometimes you want to be in a certain mood. My wife's definitely like that with certain things where she's like, Grey's Anatomy used to play. I mean, that's a dumb TV show that was really successful, but they used to play like, that
I want to cry my eyes out.
Like a love story, something like that.
Love Story is a great one.
Yeah.
You know how Love Story is going to end. It's not going to end well. Brian's Song was a great one for from a sports movie standpoint. Super early TV movie from the early 70s, but you knew halfway through Brian Piccolo's getting cancer. And it's like, all right, I'll take another ride on this sad train. But it is a certain type. We did Fucked Up Family February.
Yeah.
We did. And I think Rock Bottom Month is in that same genre. Craig, I have a question for you. Does your generation like being sad through movies? Or is this like an older generation thing?
Because does even like the idea of Rock Bottom Month appeal to you?
Not at all. Okay. No, I was joking with people outside before. It's going to be hilarious. Like when this movie pops up on people's Rewatchables feed, they're going to be like, "What in the hell are we doing? This is the saddest movie ever made." I'll tell you my thoughts at the end, but no, I don't like being scared in movies, and I don't like being sad. I never want to go into a movie.
See, I think Craig's generation is very upfront about their feelings. So it's like, here's why I'm sad. I had these things, but art, like especially my generation, was bottled up baggage, never talking about anything.
Well, the cliche
and then
thing
we
to
had
say
the
now
movies was how we kind of got through our
Got
shit.
it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Like,
Craig's
that's why-
generation is just like tweeting or
Well, the
putting
cliche
Instagram
thing
posts.
to
I'm
say
really
now,
sad right now.
all the people in my generation, the cliche thing would be like, the world's sad enough. We're constantly like the news is so sad. We see everything like we want to be happy when we watch something on TV. We're not going to put something sad.
I think we're more of the generation where it's like we have unresolved feelings about our dads and we have to watch Field of Dreams to understand it.
Right.
You know?
Or Kramer versus Kramer when we did that one. It's like, this is our divorce movie. So this movie, $9 million budget.
It's such an interesting idea, though, about like how we don't need our culture anymore to make us feel things because kids have been trained to. I think about this even with raising my kid, where my wife is like, "Tell us how you're feeling." Like she's like saying that too. Like no one was like, "Sean, how are you feeling?" When I was 5 years old, they were like, "Go stand over there and shut up."
Yeah.
Right.
It's a lot different.
Go back to hockey practice.
$9 million budget made $79 million. Sadly, Raj was gone by the time this movie came out.
I would like this movie.
I'm going to say guaranteed 4 stars from Raj.
It's basically everything he wants.
This is like this checks 45
story
of his
and characters.
boxes.
This is what he wants. Story, characters, great performances.
Okay, guys, scenes that jumped out in this movie. So Lonergan, he just creates this pace coming out of the gate, right? We're with Lee, and it's like, man, this guy seems sad, and he's doing janitor stuff. And then he ends up in that one lady's house and he's like just plunging in the toilet. And she's like, "I'm sorry, Lee. I'm sorry. It's so gross." He's like, "It's okay. It's okay." And you're like, oh man, this guy is fucking rock bottom.
He hears her be like, "Do you ever have a fantasy about your handyman?" And I'm like, what a great movie.
Then he gets in the fight with the other neighbor. But it's
the
just,
best.
we're just laying the groundwork for this guy's life fucking sucks.
Yeah. How you know it's my fucking tub?
Yeah.
That's Missy Yeager, who is like an actress who was in a lot of early Lonergan plays. Who's like that's the thing in all his movies too. You got all these like all stars from him putting on plays in Broadway over the years.
Patrick's hockey scene I enjoyed.
I have so many thoughts.
You want to just do it now?
Well, I'm saving it for a very special part. Yeah.
Good. Some good Massachusetts hocky.
Yes.
I like the coach. Just the
great Tate Donovan.
The
I was going
rink
to say
is
incredible use
also,
of Tate Donovan.
rink's perfect.
so great. He doesn't have a name in the credits. It's just Patrick's hockey coach.
It's also not until the holdovers has he been used so perfectly for 1.5 scenes where you're like, holy shit, they got Tate Donovan.
Yeah. Right.
It's also so great that the extra, this is why Lonergan is the best, is like Patrick goes back and the coach is like, "All right, your dad died. I'm going to forget about the fighting."
Right.
But no more of that shit. And you're off the team for a week to think about your feelings.
Think about your dad.
Yeah.
He was either Coach Sullivan, Coach Murphy, or Coach Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
He was like one of the three. There were no other names.
Fitzy.
That was definitely Fitzy, and he was, he was a wing coming up playing hockey.
Yeah. Had a cup of coffee with the Bruins.
Yeah, the bees.
I like the scene when Patrick's hanging out with his buddies and they're talking about Star Trek and doing that. It's just fun to watch.
Of culture.
It's a little Good Will Hunting-ish. Lee's buddies in the basement, where it's just, it's just fun. I'm having fun in Lee's basement. Everybody's busting each other's balls. It's great. What could go wrong? It's a flashback scene.
The moment where, she comes and she reads them the riot act and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And everybody's like really quiet. And then as soon as she walks away, he's like, "She can't talk to us like that."
She gets mad, does the don't drink and drive thing, and then everybody leaves and he goes to walk. Mm-hmm. And then it immediately becomes one of the toughest scenes I think that's ever been filmed.
Amazing though about that. Well, two things about it. One, he uses flashbacks, especially in the first hour 15 minutes of the movie, in this very unusual way where you're like, wait a second, is this a flashback?
What year are we in?
Yeah,
are
like if you see Kyle Chandler, it's a flashback, but like most of the time, especially in the first 15 minutes, it's a little disorienting.
Yeah.
It works really well. It's really subtle. But then also he doesn't show us, for example, him lighting up the fireplace. It's only when he tells the story do we know that that's what happened too. So like everything is all about what's kept from us.
We never see what she says to him.
Yes.
You have to imagine that. You have to imagine that.
So it allows for like, who knows? Like, who know? Even like how responsible someone is or is not for the thing that has happened. We don't totally fully understand because he's withheld all this information from us.
This was a dead silent in the movie theater scene. Where like sometimes there's a scene when you're in a crowded movie theater where it's just like you could hear somebody's foot moving. It's so quiet.
You'll have to remind me because I know you probably were seeing stuff early at this point, but there was like a real like don't tell anybody about this because you have to see it for yourself. Like it wasn't really a twist, but I didn't know going into the theater, and I remember just like looking at my wife, and we were both like, "Holy fucking shit!"
I had no idea. I mean, it played at Sundance, so coming out of Sundance, people were like, "Wow, saddest movie of all time just dropped." But beyond that, like you didn't have any details about it. I mean, it's punishing.
And then it goes to the police interview, the kind of not even an interrogation when he's like
he's trying to confess,
and he's like, I didn't put the screw in the fireplace. He does that whole thing. And they're like, all right, well, you didn't commit a crime. He leaves and he grabs the gun. And it's that I think it's going to be the number one rock bottom moment we probably do out of all these rock bottom movies.
To take your own life with a policeman's gun after that.
In a police station.
That's about as rock bottom as it gets until we do hardcore.
It's just an amazingly written scene though, where obviously he's trying to get locked.
We're stuck in it until we do hardcore. Because, by the way, we are doing hardcore. It's finally happening.
You gotta
turn it off.
You got to create the rock bottom scale. Like, what's on the scale in the history of the rewatchables?
I think this is a 10. No, this is a 10.
Yeah, there's nothing.
There's never been anything worse in a movie that I can think of. Because it's one thing for the most horrible thing to happen to you, but when it's your kids, that's the number one worst thing that can happen to anybody. But then it's your fault. It's like a double worst thing.
Yes.
I don't think it can be.
It's every parent's nightmare.
Yeah.
It is their deepest, darkest nightmare. I think like there's something really interesting in the way that it's done where like you could imagine in a different society with a different person, if something like this happened, a parent would be held responsible for using cocaine, for maybe like a kind of gross negligence. But in this community,
questions about that.
Yeah.
But in this community, they're like, you're free to go.
Yeah.
We know you. You're a good guy, Lee.
We were doing cocaine and they're like, anything else?
Yeah.
What else?
You know, like they're letting him off the hook basically for the word. And he's like, you've suffered
some
enough.
Scratch cards.
Yeah, scratch cards. So it was Friday night. That's what you're saying.
There's some good Lee and Patrick scenes.
They're incredible together.
The scene when they're arguing about the burial plot and where the car is parked. It's the kind of stuff like if you were saying, this movie is 2 hours, 20 minutes, what would you cut? I wouldn't cut anything from this movie.
I agree.
Every single scene and moment has a purpose. And just watching them interact, and Lee kind of needs Patrick, but he doesn't want to admit it to himself. It's like the one person who will talk to him.
Yeah. And
Patrick needs him too.
You know what I had forgotten in between viewings of this movie is this is not a Lucas Hedges part in a lot of ways. Like in my mind, like this is not like Lucas Hedges' public persona.
Yeah.
Is this fucking smartass athlete and
like Playboy.
Yeah.
Playboy.
Multiple
and
girlfriends.
it's just one of the great stick men of the North Shore.
Right.
It's like it's such a great part for him. But he's so fucking annoying and funny in this movie. He just will never let Lee go. Like he's just berating him the entire time and is such a smartass about it.
The
I have
funeral
a note about that, yeah.
Funeral scene with no dialogue and just music is pretty unbelievable. And Michelle Williams comes back and he sees that and
he does that a lot. He does that also in the fire scene too, where it's just adagio and G minor. Like he just lets long stretches of classical music play over these really, really powerful scenes. And you're like, oh, well, he's a playwright. He must need to like write the words. But a lot of his movies are just visual, just music and picture.
And Affleck really broke down and was not in the script. He actually got upset as they were filming it, broke down. And Lonergan, one of the things that in the research, like sometimes things will happen when they're filming and he'll just be like, oh, I didn't realize that was going to happen. Let's keep that. And I think that's why all the actors like him.
I think he's also the best writer.
He's also an amazing writer.
So he writes good lines for them too. That's definitely one reason why.
Well, that leads us to the hill scene. Lee runs into his ex-wife who's got the stroller. Her friend leaves. And New category for this one. CR created last week the Rick Dalton Award for the best fucking acting I've ever seen in my life.
Does it go to both of them, or does it go
I
to
think it goes to both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's she's unbelievable. And the way he plays it, where he said his quote was, the challenge for him was to have all these feelings and hold it without weeping and wailing, gnashing your teeth, to be there, but also not be there.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. He's like, it's okay. It's all right. He won't look at her. And she's just trying to connect to them. Like, Lee, she really needs him to have something, and he's just dead.
It's such a, at once, like, real raw scene that is also, if you take a step back and like close your eyes and listen, the dialogue is music. Like the way he's trying to stop her from saying what she's got to say. And he's like, I can't even give you like the bare minimum of what you're looking for here. And it's just unbelievable. Like,
I feel like it's also
so precise.
It's something we understand but don't know, which is that in the aftermath of what happened, their marriage fell apart. But what happened?
She blamed him.
And but in that scene, you learned that. Like, we didn't know that until we hear her say, I said horrible things to you, unforgivable
That's
things.
I should burn in hell.
So smart, you know? Like, he didn't really let us know what transpired
There's
between
two scenes
them.
missing that we don't actually need. And that's one of them.
Yeah,
where
it's them fighting.
Yeah.
You
And
can
her
almost
being
feel him
like,
writing it and cutting it.
Yeah. And then, and her saying, I should burn in hell for the things I said to you, which, just as a layered piece of dialogue, since their children died in a fire, is an incredible line to say.
Yeah.
And then that imagination, which everybody who watches the movie in their mind will conjure up, what could she have said to him, is so much more powerful than if you give Michelle Williams a 5-minute berating him scene.
That's it. It's the same thing with, I don't want to step on it if this is one of the scenes, but when he goes to visit his mom, similarly.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if that's a memorable scene or not for you, but like Gretchen Mol barely says anything in this extended 3 or 4 minute sequence. She can't even get anything out. And then the information is delivered via email from Matthew Broderick's character, basically, that she's still not well. And we still don't totally understand, you know, she's an alcoholic, but like, what happened to her? What went on? And he was like, you know what? It doesn't even matter.
When he's
like,
like,
the details don't matter.
Look, if she's fucking semi-human, I'll let you see it. Like, how bad would she have been?
Yeah, you're right. That scene's cut. I like that, though. I like that there's stuff that they're kind of showing us, not telling us. The hill scene's one of the best scenes of this century for me. I don't know how long the list is, but it just, if you're just doing like, what are the single best scenes of this century, it has to be
just
included.
Gonna say, this is a little bit of my Stephen A. Smith, but I'm just going to say that it's kind of like when you have Led Zeppelin 4 and you're like, Stairway to Heaven. This is Stairway. The hill scene is Stairway to Heaven. But then when you listen to it a bunch, you're like, but I actually like this song more. I kind of fell apart in the scene after the bar fight where he's at George's house and he breaks down in George's wife's arms, and she's just like trying to get coffee into him. And he just starts crying because he's like finally breaks. Like after that scene, he has to go get his fucking head kicked in to get in touch with that feeling. But it's incredible. Like that scene is silent, but it's amazing.
I don't want to take away from the emotional experience you had with that scene, but the scene on the hill, I've seen this movie 3 times now.
Me too.
I was sitting alone in my garage yesterday in the afternoon watching it by myself. And the scene starts, and as soon as Michelle Williams starts talking, I just started crying. Like it was like there was like a taser attached to my body that forced me to do it. I don't know why I don't know what it is. Is it like the music? Is it her face? Is it the way that it's written? Is it that interplay, that kind of rhythm of the dialogue? But it's also because nobody else in the movie really says what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Like the whole movie is just people trying to like hold it together. Patrick, the way that Patrick deals with his dad's death.
Yeah.
He's like, he's been anticipating it.
Falls the freezer at 1 a.m, the meat, all of a sudden he breaks down.
He has one meltdown.
Yeah.
And those are the only 2 meltdowns in the movie.
And it's actually very realistic because he has that panic attack and then the next day he's like, whatever. You know what I mean?
He gets over it because he's a teenager, right? And he's got thick skin. But like, because she's the only person who's willing to give you like, my heart is broken. Your heart is broken. Like she's saying the things that everybody while they're watching the movie is thinking. I don't know. It's amazing.
The other taser to the heart scene is I can't beat it.
Well, yeah, we're getting into that. I had one question on the hill scene though. How many actresses could have pulled that off?
It's not a very long list.
You know what? I bet a lot of people.
Meryl Streep?
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah.
I wonder how many there's.
Would you have bought Anne Hathaway in that scene?
No. I love her too, and no.
But there's like moments where like I wonder if other actors watch that scene and be like, "Can I even have done that?" You know what I mean? It's like watching an incredible. It's like watching Jokic and be like, "I don't think I can do that."
Yeah,
well, what's crazy is she was on fucking Dawson's Creek. Like, there's still a piece of me that can't believe this happened for Michelle Williams. She would not have been the first round draft pick.
Even
from
on
movie.
that show, though, you were like, she's pretty soulful. You know, like she kind of had something that the other actors didn't have, and some pretty famous people came out of that show. But like when you were watching that show, like this character's pretty strange. You don't really see a young woman, a young teenage woman on TV that is like this. And she did turn out to, I mean, she's like in the 99th percentile. She's really amazing.
Yeah, Brokeback happened, and that's what pushed her. I can't think of 5 actresses who could have been on that hill and done as good of a job. Even like
Jessica Lange.
Yeah.
Emma Stone?
She rarely does like hard, straight drama like this.
Could Jennifer Lawrence have done that? Like Winter's Bone, Jennifer? I no, right?
I don't know.
It's tough, man.
She's pretty credible as a New Englander too.
Yeah.
You know,
Michelle?
like she gets the accent pretty good.
Well, just when you thought that was the saddest scene in the movie, and then just when you thought him collapsing into his friend's wife's arms was the saddest, then we get I Can't Beat It.
Yeah.
Which, it's almost like, I think the third time I saw this movie, I think my memory of it was more profound.
It's not.
And that's
simple.
what's so good about the scene is he's just like, I can't beat it.
Can you imagine like just to do the entire movie in 4 words? That's the movie.
It reminds me a little bit of the ending of You Can Count on Me when they're sitting on the bench together. And at the very end, Mark Ruffalo says, "Do you remember what we used to say to each other when we were kids?" But then they don't say "You can count on me," but that's what it means.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm not giving it to you." And this is kind of the inversion of that, where it's like, this is the only thing he'll say about it. The only thing he'll say about what happened to him is I can't beat it.
What's aged the best? My guy Josh Hamilton's in this.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to see him.
Lonergan go-to, I think, right? I think he's done some
Yeah,
theater.
well, he was in, I think, one of the original This Is Our Youth.
Yeah, with Ethan Hawke?
I can't remember who was in that first side, but a lot of his plays are these like 3-handers about young people living in New York in the 1990s. And so he accrued this like really cool collection of people. And then all those, after this, or around the time of this movie, a lot of those plays were put back on Broadway. So like This Is Our Youth, The Waverly Gallery, and Lobby Hero. And I saw all 3 of them on Broadway, and they're all amazing.
Wow.
So good. But they're so different from the movies because they're not these like
tragedies.
Yeah. They're very, very different.
Well, he also has the Broderick relationship because they've been friends since they were 15, which is why Broderick popped into You Can Count on Me and then this movie.
I think Broderick's mom, who was just written about in Ed Zwick's memoir, very unfavorably, actually, because she really got involved in the
have
set
that,
of
and I've
Glory.
read 50 pages.
Yeah, it's a really good book. But she had a lot of thoughts about Glory, because apparently she's a very learned woman.
Yeah.
But she was taught Lonergan a lot about drama and plays, and he always cites her in interviews as like a person who changed his life.
I have, for what's aged the best, Affleck as a really great, dead-eyed, pissed-off New England drunk.
I have Casey's massholery.
That, like...
Getting in 2 bar fights. What an incredible 2 minutes of Massachusetts driving. Fucking come on! He's like honking at the guy. I know he's... Obviously, his brother has passed away, but like... Yeah, and then just like the brief little tidbits of sports stuff. Like he's watching the Isaiah Thomas Celtics and the Bees.
Some Bees.
Yeah.
That look, the J-Bug in the mid-90s, my buddy J-Bug, who was way more street smart than I was, and there was a certain look, and we would always call it the grab the beer bottle look, where if you're like, oh, that guy's coming over, and he has that look that Affleck has, J-Bug would just kind of instinctively grab a beer bottle.
If you know him, like, there's probably not a right answer.
It's a certain, does Philly have that kind of dead-eyed, they're just staring through you as they're looking at you? And
that's what happens when we watched the Eagles in the playoffs this past season.
Oh,
it just goes dead.
Amazon Studios, this basically put them on the map, and I think led to Netflix and Apple and a lot of money getting spent on movies for a few years there. So I think it was positive. I don't know if all the choices were great, but at least people are spending money on screenplays.
Yeah,
actors.
It was actually a pretty weird, good little mini run because Ted Hope, longtime independent film producer, got hired to be the studio chief. And so he was basically running the studio, but using his taste from like 90s Sundance cinema.
Yeah.
So bringing in movies like this and then somehow making $78 million or whatever it made. It's pretty great.
Leslie Barber did the score, which is really good. I have for What's Age the Best, having a boat.
Yeah.
Is it?
I mean,
I don't know. I just like when I see it because I'll never have one, but I always makes me jealous that I don't have one, but I would never want one because of the upkeep.
I always make that joke that when people are like, why do you buy Blu-rays? I'm like, I don't have any other hobbies. Like, I don't have a boat. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, my boat is my Blu-rays.
Right.
It seems like a huge pain in the ass.
It seems
as somebody who
huge
grew up on
pain.
Long
Really
Island, it
expensive.
seemed like a huge pain
But
in
when
the
you
ass.
see it in movies, it's like, having a boat looks
aren't
great.
boats just like also like instantly depreciating assets too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to
Yeah.
love being
It's
out.
like the Jeremy Grant contract.
Yeah.
It's just immediately worth half as
That's
much as
if you get a boat, name it
you
Jeremy
paid.
Grant.
The New England vibe in this movie. I have one more, but do you have any other What's Age the Best?
Well, this is complicated, but like the Casey Affleck trying to shoot himself meme is definitely like kind of low key one of my favorites on Twitter. Is when Charles Holmes
we were
is
like,
like,
Embiid out 6 to 8 weeks.
Charles Holmes is like, I got to talk about X-Men '97, and it's just this meme of him grabbing the gun. Also, Patrick has a poster or like a flag for Bridge 9 Records, which is like a legendary Boston hardcore label. It's just a great touch with him and his fucking stupid band.
You have anything, Sean?
Gretchen Mol redemption arc,
Oh yeah,
emerging as one of the better character actresses of her generation.
G-Mall.
She's great in
You
this.
never doubted her.
She's great. I definitely 100% did doubt her, and at the Rounders is probably good for her. All right, What's Age the Best? The accents. I did a rating system. Casey's a 10.
Yeah.
It's just perfect.
You
I
know
mean,
where
it's a hometown advantage. He grew up in Massachusetts, so he gets it.
peaks during the ping pong trash talk.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It has
Just
to
stay
get
out of
worse
this
when you're
quadrant, there won't be any tears.
drunk. Yeah. When you add alcohol to the accent and the actors that understand, like, oh, my character's drinking in this scene, I got to ratchet it up. He just gets it.
Yeah.
I have Gretchen Mol as a 9. I thought she was
carries it.
fantastic.
She
Like, you
carries
would have
it.
thought she was from Hingham. Michelle Williams was a 9, but she's a 9 with whatever she wants to do. Lucas Hedges, I gave him a 7. Thought it was good. It kind of drifted off a couple times, but for the most part, I believed in it. I thought it was there.
What do you think of Chandler?
Well,
Because I think Chandler spiritually, when he's getting diagnosed and like Casey says something sideways to Gretchen Mol and he just turns to him and goes, stop that shit. Like that is so like old Boston guy says that to you. Like
I had Chandler at a 3. So he had the attitude and the demeanor, but he did the classic, the guy playing JFK was like, yeah, Rob, yeah. Like he was trying to do the yeah, a little bit, but he had the zest. He had that fuck you kind of attitude to it, but it never really landed it. And then Tate Donovan clearly had showed up 2 days earlier and was like, you want me to use an accent? So he's somewhere between a 2 and a 4. He's fine. I'm not holding against him, but I don't think he was with a dialect coach for a month trying to nail it.
You forgot the old guy whose pipes are getting fixed at the end, who was a 19 out of 10 on the scale.
Yeah,
He was talking about his dad who wandered off.
I don't
Yeah.
count.
That guy
Locals
is
don't
the
count real
lady
skills.
who, like, after Lee tries to get a job at the boatyard and she comes back and she's like, I don't want to see him in.
Yeah, she was a good
I
one.
was
But
like,
that-
oh, shit.
I think they used all locals for this.
What
The
about
kid-
CJ Wilson? His friend, George. CJ Wilson's from Alabama.
Oh, interesting. I thought that was a local.
He's pretty good.
He was good.
He's
Yeah,
a really
at
good
least
character.
7.5,
if
8.
Bill thinks he's a local, then it's
Yeah,
like
that
a
was
9.
good. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's at least an 8. Kid Cudi Pursuit of Happiness award for best needle drop. Stentorian's first song. I gotta run. They're cranking in the garage, man.
they suck
High
so
hopes
bad.
for them.
They suck
It
so
would be
bad.
funny if for Rock Bottom Month we changed this to, would this movie have been improved or worsened by adding Kid Cudi's Pursuit of Happiness as a needle drop?
There is a Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts, the Dylan song is in this too, which is a really, really good needle drop.
What'd you have for the Great Shot Gordo? Most cinematic
I
shot.
took the last shot.
Yeah.
It's just the two of them with their back. There's a lot of really great back to the camera acting in this movie. And I thought that last shot kind of like
Them going up the hill too.
Yeah.
When he's throwing the lacrosse ball.
So I really like
Yeah.
the hill with the ball, and it's and he's trying to bounce it, and he loses
It was like,
it,
great
and
throw.
it seems like Lonergan just kept it going.
Yeah.
I thought, I don't know, something
That's
memorable
great.
about it. And then that him on the hill with Michelle Williams, like just the way that's framed,
Yeah.
and the hill slanted.
He
and
did.
he's
I read
actually
this,
below her.
Yes.
I read an interview in Filmmaker where Lonergan's talking about, because most people talk to Lonergan about like, grief or writing, and he was just doing a lot of filmmaking talk, and he was saying that a lot of the shots in Manchester are based on his favorite shot in Shampoo, where it's like these two shots that basically he's like, I love to get them in the frame together, acting together. And not only is it just like really good, efficient filmmaking because you can cover more, but it's just like he's inspired by the 70s film, and you can really see it.
I think also the fight that we mentioned before after the heartbreaking scene is cool. It's like a Renaissance painting or something.
Awesome.
Watching the guys beating the shit out of them all crowding
And they're
around
all
him and
fucking
beating him
day
up.
drinking. It's just
It's great. The Van Lathan Award for Did This Movie Need More Black People?
I think A.O. Scott thought that it did, right?
Yeah. Should we talk about this?
Sure.
Okay. So there's at least in our circles, a somewhat, I don't know if infamous is the right word, but a very strange review of this movie in the New York Times, which is a very laudatory review. It's as all were at the time. That is just like, this is an incredible story. No one has a sense for like location, voice, character development like Lonergan. But then in the final third of the review, A.O. Scott, the Times critic at the back then, is like, this movie is also unmistakably about race. And here are the ways that we know how. One, it's entirely about white male characters. So that alone is like a flag. Two, we see two black characters at the beginning of the movie. Stephen McKinley Henderson, who's like one of the great character actors working right now, who's his boss. And then the woman who has a crush on him, who he's working in the room with. And otherwise, we see that this is like really a story about the white working class and the way that it is like withdrawn in our society. And he makes like a case for it in the final third of this review, which is certainly his right as a critic. I don't know that, I think if you had said to Kenneth Lonergan, like, were you thinking about race at all while you were making the movie? He might be like, yeah, and here are the ways in which I was. But it's weird for a movie that is like pretty clearly a masterpiece to be like, I'm devoting my read of the movie, almost half of my read of the movie, on what feels like a kind of invented theory of what was going on in our culture at the time. So I encourage anybody who likes
really
this movie to read it.
Piece of writing. Yeah. I bet this is not what you thought that we were going to respond with the Van Lathan Did This Movie.
Where it is in Massachusetts, it is what it is.
I think we might have said that to each other. We were like, in what universe is this a movie about black people? Black people don't live there. Like, and if they do, it's a very small number.
It could not be deeper in the North Shore. The Butch's Girlfriend.
But yes, Eddie Murphy should be in it.
Yeah, right. The Butch's Girlfriend Award for Weak Link of the Film. So I've seen this 3 times. My wife watched it with me. It was a really fun Saturday morning at the Simmons house. The wife gets out and the kids don't. We can't get past that. And I know, like, she was sleeping downstairs, and the fire department came and pulled her out. But my wife was just like, I'm just not leaving the house. I'm getting the kids before the furnace blows up. I'm not going to be the first one out. It's not happening. It's not really explained in the movie. They do it as like, oh, she's her sinuses, and so he didn't want to put the heat on, and she was downstairs. But it's kind of more than a nitpick for me.
Okay,
I think it's a tricky thing because, like, the mechanics of the story are never really even fully explained to us. It's just like through what other people. It's all hearsay, basically.
Right.
Yeah. We never see anything. So
Lonergan doesn't really care.
Yeah.
My Butch's Girlfriend there's a lot of driving in this movie. Like, if you were gonna, like, the one weak link is like, at one point in the movie, Leah's like, I'm not your fucking chauffeur.
Right.
And I'm like, I know, because we've been watching you drive this guy back and forth between houses for like 25 minutes in this movie.
I don't know if this is a nitpick or a weak link. I don't know, you tell me. And it's critical to the movie because the story doesn't work without it. But Patrick not recognizing that Lee having to go home and what it is doing to him.
And no one ever being like, give him a fucking break.
And no one making it clear to him that he can't be here. Like, he can't get a job. He can't walk down the street without feeling horrible. Like, Patrick never, ever has any empathy for that throughout the entire movie. It's obviously a purposeful choice, but it's a little,
pictures.
It strains credulity. Yeah.
Until he sees the photo.
Counter.
You have a 16-year-old and you know what it's like?
16-year-old they're like the ultimate narcissist. They have no idea how anyone else is feeling about anything. It would I don't even think it would occur to that kid like, hey, I wonder what's going on with Lee today.
But if something like that happened in your family,
no, what you're saying makes sense. But I also think it's realistic that he's just in his own world and his dad died and he could care less about Lee's feelings about anything.
Did we do?
I say this as somebody who probably said 10 words to my son this weekend because he wasn't never home. It's not like my son's like, hey, Dad, how was the podcast?
Yeah,
like,
right.
He could care less.
How's Chris?
Yeah. You guys can see CR and Sean today?
Did we do Big Kahuna Award?
I dumped it for this one,
Can
but
I
you
just
want
give
it?
a shout out to Sandy's mom's carbonara?
Yeah. Is this homemade carbonara?
God, Jill, this is great.
What's age the worst? We talked about Casey coming out of this movie and the Me Too stuff that overshadowed his performance. It is what it is.
I'd say what's else age the worst is trying to do something after seeing this movie, even for the second, third,
like dinner right after?
Yeah, it's like it's really difficult to like. It's not an easy forget it. You don't
like
forget
let's go get some drinks.
Yeah.
Do you like to see a movie first and then dinner, or dinner first and then a movie?
Movie dinner, and then you talk about the movie.
I don't like to eat at 10 o'clock at night, so probably dinner then the movie.
See, that's why that's a divergence right there.
You go to the 4 movie, and
that's
then
why
you go
CR
to
night
4 p.m.
movies.
to 6
Banker's
p.m.
hours, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. I got which is the worst? Tate Donovan wearing 2 polos. I don't know if that's like
I love
historically accurate to North Shore
Seems
hockey
locally
coaches,
accurate, no?
but it's fucking outrageous.
So when this movie came out, a couple of the reviews kind of criticized the Adagio in G minor, where it was just, I guess, in too many movies. And people were like, I was in Rollerball and Flashdance. Like, come on, Lonergan, you're better than that.
Put Gimme Shelter in there.
I don't know. I'm just, it's almost a what's age the worst that people were mad at that, because I think that song's pretty
Fortunate
effective
Son
for
by
movies.
CCR.
Yeah.
And then
that would have been good. That's an interesting criticism, because it doesn't even cite like. Well, I'm not going to film nerd out.
Rollerball also came out 42 years before this movie.
Was it like 1975? It was like 50 years ago.
So they ran out of money, and Damon told the whole story on my 2018 pod, and it's a what's age the worst, because Matt Damon, you're rich. Like, you could have chipped in for a little more money to film the final scene.
Did you say that to him when he was on the pod?
No, I wish I had. I wish I
had.
You
gotta hold him accountable.
He said, I love Manchester. I'm incredibly proud of it, but Kenny had an ending. Maybe we could just have Craig play this whole scene if he can find it. That's too much of a pain in the ass. He said, Craig's like, fuck this.
God damn it.
Motherfucker.
I gotta listen to
Are you fucking kidding me?
He said there was a flashback to before Casey's kids had died in the movie, where they're all on a boat, the whole family, and they're whale watching, an incredible moment of joy, and the family's together, and whales start coming out, and we needed a drone. He said, you needed a fucking drone cam. This is Damon. It was one day of shooting. You got to get lucky with the whales. We could have figured it out. It was an epic scene. The camera pulls back, and he was like, it was epic. It was beautiful. It tied the whole thing together, and we ran out of money. And I was like, fuck.
Come on, Matt.
Come on, Matt. Dig into the pockets there, buddy.
Yeah.
You've made 7 Bourne movies.
Tells you a little bit about
probably
how
why
things
you had
work.
to make
You
that
know?
worth it, actually. Yeah.
This is how things work. People don't put their own money in.
Yeah.
You know, they really don't put their own money in.
Was there a better title for this movie? No.
Isn't it great how like beautiful this part of the world looks in this movie too? There's a lot of shots of just the neighborhoods and ocean or the sea.
It's really nice over there.
Cool.
Yeah, you don't realize how cold it is through the movies, but Coda had the same thing. Like, it made Gloucester seem like the most fun place on the planet to go visit.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah. So the hottest take award, this is a reader suggestion. They wanted us to not call it the Stephen A. Smith hottest take award anymore. And the reader suggested that we call it the CR thinks Luke Wilson could have been Harrison Ford hottest take award.
Uh-huh.
How do you stand on this, Sean?
I remember that moment vividly on the pod and having an aneurysm. That was the first of many.
The reader said that was the hottest take that's ever been said on the pod, and we should commemorate it with putting CR in the award.
Thank you.
What do you think of that, Craig?
I love it.
Luke Wilson could have been Harrison Ford. Do you want to revisit that take?
Was this from Old School?
I think it was from Old School.
Do you think we should have replaced Casey Affleck with Luke Wilson in this movie?
I can't beat it. You know, like,
can't beat it.
Yeah. I just, goddamn. Randy?
My hottest take award. This is going to get dark, but I think the wife shares 50% of the blame.
Here we go.
Fuck's
Yeah,
sake.
yeah. Let's get into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Her sinuses, they couldn't put the heat on. Like, get a fucking neti pot.
Yep.
She has one. She's got a humidifier blowing. It's 15. We're not there with Flonase
You
yet.
have 3 kids. Your fireplace screen situation is that flimsy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the number one most important thing you have to have when you have kids. It's a nice, sturdy fireplace screen situation. And then it gets pulled out and her kids are still in the house. I don't know.
Where do you stand on him?
What is she telling him? Like, she hopes he burns in hell. Maybe she should
says
take some
she should burn
accountability.
in hell for what she said to him.
What do you
Right.
think about him crushing 13 Budweisers and doing a
some
few,
cocaine.
few
Yeah.
lines?
I'm
Yeah.
not saying he's
He's
blameless.
so jittery after 4 a.m. He's got to go to the state
Go
store
to the
get
Packy.
fucking
Yeah. Let's go to the Packy at 2:30 in the morning.
It's a great hot take.
Thank you.
Yep.
You got one?
I think I had something like much more low stakes.
It's the hottest take. I'm going for it. It's rock bottom
I'm trying to
month.
figure out how to come back from that.
We can just move on.
Well, I think it's just like it's just a testimony to just like sometimes it's okay if at the end of your career, if you're a genius, you only have 4 movies. Like if Ken Lonergan only makes 4 movies, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like all the time I'm like, oh, but what if? And what if they had made more? What if they
There
had
are
done more?
directors where I'm
But it's
like, I wish you could
4
crank
movies is
more
good.
out. Yeah. There are guys who are you're like, oh man, it wouldn't be awesome if you were on a more of like an old studio and like
Yeah.
cranking them out every 20 months.
I romanticize that, and I love that Curtis Hanson was just like, yeah, I'm just like making a thriller every 18
Soderbergh's
months.
doing
That's
that,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, Soderbergh, I love all that shit. But it's like if you got one Manchester by the Sea in you, or Manchester by the Sea, and you can count on me in you, and then that's all you do, cool.
And he did a lot of plays.
A lot of plays, yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe he's got something in the hopper now. He did Howard's End too. That adaptation of
Wonderful
Howard's End, which was
adaptation.
really, really good. Was that Showtime?
It was Stars.
Stars.
I believe it was a BBC production that was broadcast on Stars.
I felt the same way
Big
about
Howard's End guy?
No.
No.
I felt the same way about Doug Liman before I saw the Roadhouse remake.
Tough.
Casting what ifs. We mentioned the Damon piece, and Damon, once he realized he couldn't do it, just steered it to
So
Casey
let me
Affleck.
ask you this. Should Matt Damon had carved out a couple of Ridley Scott days from The Martian and just been like, I'll come do Joe. I'll be Joe. I'll be the brother.
I think it is a better movie if you do that.
So, all right, we're jumping ahead now to recasting Couch because I think Ben Affleck should have been Kyle Chandler's part, and I think Damon.
I get too distracted.
I think Damon should have been Matthew Broderick's part.
I think it would have been a little bit over emphasizing what is clearly going on here, but that like Joe is the more reliable, maybe more
Successful.
beloved, successful older brother. And I think if you put Damon in that part, it works even better because Damon is that tractor beam, and he's so clearly like he's the guy
So
you
you
want in
wouldn't put
charge.
Ben Affleck in there?
Who could Ben Affleck? I would love it if Ben Affleck was the guy who walks up, like Casey walks up to, is like, do I know you?
But why couldn't he have been Joe? Because they actually like look alike, and
They do. I think he
because
was
they're
shooting
actually brothers.
Well,
I think he was
here's the
shooting
thing.
Justice League at this time.
yeah,
At
probably
this
was.
point, even though
Probably
he's coming out
Jack,
of
too.
like
Yeah.
doing Assassination of Jesse James, like the thing about Casey Affleck that he has, which is kind of like a similar quality, but different than like what Philip Seymour Hoffman had, which is essentially like he's capable of doing movie star parts, but is always a character actor. Like he's always doing a character part. I think Ben Affleck is Ben Affleck. And I think one of the reasons
overshadows it.
why
right.
this movie works is even with Matthew Broderick, there's never a moment where you get taken out of the movie. Where you're like, oh, that's Ben Affleck. You know what I mean?
So
Like
Damon might have just taken you out of the movie.
He might
with
have.
any part he played.
He might have. But he's the king of cameos, though.
I know.
That's the thing, is he's great at this kind of thing. You know, like he's always showing up in movies for 5 minutes. And you're like, oh shit, Matt Damon, pretty cool scene.
I mean, he promoted
Even
this
Road
movie
Trip.
as if he was
The
in it
road
anyway.
trip Europe,
European
whatever
road
that
trip,
was.
yeah.
There's a great casting what if that's even better than the Damon thing. Timothy Chalamet auditioned for Patrick.
Yeah.
And did not get it.
They were
What do you think of that one, Craig? Chalamet playing hockey?
Doesn't have the frame. Hedges is way better. I don't know if Chalamet gives me.
You
I
can tell
can't.
it's draft season that you immediately went to his measurables.
Yeah.
You know?
The frame doesn't work.
5'7".
What's his
He
40?
didn't run the
Yeah.
cones that well.
Chalamet doesn't give me like middle class or lower class East Coast. Like Chalamet's too much of like an NYU kid to me.
I mean, they're
Right.
both NYU kids.
I know, but Hedges has the ability to get there that I don't think
Yeah.
Chalamet can do that.
Hedges does have a Massachusetts feel to him, which I don't know how he pulled it off, but he definitely
He's a New
does.
York kid, right? I mean, his father was a
Chalamet, I don't know
filmmaker.
if I would have bought being from Manchester by the Sea.
They were on a collision course to Lady Bird. They both
Right.
were pursuing Saoirse Ronan in that movie too. Those are the two boyfriends, Lucas Hedges and Chalamet.
This is the first Lonergan film not to feature his wife, J. Smith Cameron.
Jerry.
Yeah.
The goat.
Who could she have played in this
She
movie?
could have played the lady who's like, I don't want to fucking see him around here anymore.
She could have played
Yeah.
the friend's wife, too.
Yeah, she
and
could have
just
done
cradled
George's
him,
wife,
right?
yeah.
What the fuck? Put your wife in there.
Couldn't she have been Sandy's mother?
Sure.
The one who made the carbonara?
Oh, Heather Burns.
Yeah.
She would have been great.
She was one of my that guys.
All right, new category. No prep for either of you.
Okay.
You can add one character from any other movie and put it in Manchester by the Sea.
What if I was like Thanos?
We're just test driving this one.
I think Chris from The Town.
Who's she playing?
She's at the bar.
She's like, "Hey, Lee."
I think she's like his first like night back in the real world. It's like, come on, you know.
Hey, Lee.
I
Oh,
got a
that's a
couple
really
of
good
pills. We can make each other feel good.
one. I was thinking Vincent
My
Hanna.
kid's asleep. You know, it's all right. Mother's watching her. You know.
Vincent Hanna for the police interrogation.
You guys were doing cocaine. Go on.
You walk into a packy store at 2:30 in the morning. I like Chris from The Town. That's great. Best that guy award has to be C.J. Wilson, right? As George.
He's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like him. What about Anna Baryshnikov?
Well, I had her for Dion Waiters.
Okay.
That's the second Patrick girlfriend. Mikhail Baryshnikov's
That's
literally his daughter.
Yeah.
I did the Amazon push down and that popped up. I'm like,
Yeah, the X-ray
Baryshnikov?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen
And
her in
then-
forever, and she showed up in that movie Love Lies Bleeding that came out this year.
And
the
his
Kristen
other
Stewart
girlfriend
movie.
is the girl from Moonrise Kingdom, right?
It is, yeah, Kara Hayward.
Yeah.
And they had just been in Moonrise Kingdom together
Yeah.
because Hedges is in that too.
Gretchen Mall for Dion Waiters.
I mean, do
Mm.
you don't think Michelle is in Dion Waiters? It's 12 minutes.
Broderick's youth pastor guy is incredible.
Yeah.
That's an amazing, like, you know that guy so well with like
Just gonna
4
go
lines
check
of
on
dialogue.
her in the kitchen.
Did you get some green beans?
I feel like Michelle Williams, even though it's
Too much.
12 minutes, it's too.
Too big.
She's the third biggest part of the movie,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Do you want to do Tony Romo or Chris Collinsworth for director's commentary? Or should we skip?
No,
Maybe we'll
let's
skip that one.
this time.
Half-assed.
You forgot the screen, Jim.
Oh my God.
Let's go to the packing store. It's 2:30 in the
Oh,
morning,
Mike, he's
Jim.
just playing ping pong out there. Stay out of that quadrant.
Half-hazard and research.
Christ, we're going to hell for that one.
Michelle Williams said Lonergan himself was crying on set during some of the heavier scenes. That's when you know you have a sad movie, when the director's
Oh, wait.
just sobbing.
You wrote it.
It's like,
Is Kenneth Lonergan win Dion Waiters for his own movie for being like great parenting?
oh yeah, let's give him that. All right.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a great story.
You mentioned Anna Baryshnikov. Lucas Hedges, the scene when he breaks down in front of the fridge, he said someone gave him some advice when you're having an emotional scene to not talk to anybody for the entire day. And then you have this built up energy that then when you have to do the scene, it blows up. I
Yeah.
thought that was good.
Smart.
Little inside the actor studio advice.
I'm doing
from
that
Lucas.
right now for this podcast.
You haven't spoken to anyone all day. We've all had that moment too, right? You're standing in
Yeah.
front of the freezer and you're like, why won't this shit fit in the freezer?
Right.
And then you just have a little melt. You know,
Yeah.
it happens.
The scene when the paramedics are trying to roll Michelle Williams' stretcher in the ambulance and it keeps falling.
Yeah.
Not scripted.
Yeah.
They actually couldn't get it in and Lonergan just kept it
Yeah.
rolling.
Kind of rips off Inherent Vice, if I'm being honest, but you know.
Well,
the
wasn't this
pratfall
before
with
Inherent
the-
Voice?
No, it was in Inherent Vice 2014.
Okay.
And where the gurney like falls. You know what I'm talking
I do.
about? Okay. Just sell it for me.
It's a great note. And you're obviously one of our keenest observers of cinema. It's an honor to sit next to you.
Thank you so much.
Was Inherent Vice, that was like a Showtime show?
No, it was not a Showtime show.
an-
It was a Paul Thomas
Thomas
Anderson
Anderson
film.
I'm kidding.
Good job,
Apex
Bill.
Mountain. Casey Affleck, it's either this or 07.
Yeah. I mean, when's the
It's
Oscar?
gotta be
But
this.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be this.
Lonergan? I'm going to say yes. I mean, he won the
It's
Oscar.
a huge success.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he hasn't made a movie since. 9 years?
9 years.
Is he working on anything?
I'll give him a call.
It would be fun if we started doing more shit like that, where we like called filmmakers on
Just
speakerphone, like Kenny.
Kenny.
It's Sean, CR, and Bill.
That's one thing I love. I rewatched the Oscar win. First of all, Damon and Affleck presented Best Original Screenplay that year.
Right.
Yeah.
Little loaded moment because
Yeah.
Damon literally came up with the rough idea for the movie. But when he announces Lonergan, he says Kenny Lonergan, which is we're in a club moment, which is how the Oscars used to feel. Oscars don't really feel like that anymore, but it was a real like everybody here knows each other.
Oh, you know what we didn't talk about for either what's age, I don't know if it's which is the worst, but for either half-assed internet research or casting what ifs is like this is fucking Krasinski up at night just being like, I can't believe I could have been in Manchester by the Sea.
So I really dug in on that one, and it seems like he was floated initially, but by the time Lonergan was done with this,
But I thought it was like there's versions of the story that they tell where it's like he comes to Damon being like, we should do something about a working class guy in Boston who has to go back to his.
Well, he's an EP in the movie.
Yeah.
Do you think he could have handled this machine? Would you put him behind the wheel of this one?
It's just not.
Haven't seen him do it in a movie like with
the
this kind of
thing
weight
that he does. I will say, A Quiet Place is not something I ever would have thought in a million years he would have been capable of as a director, Krasinski. So I don't want to rule him out.
Casey had at least had the Gone Baby Gone. There was a little bit of a backbone of like we've seen him in a dark movie like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Michelle Williams, I'm going to say no. What is her Apex Mountain?
Venom.
Yeah, definitely Venom. Is it like Fosse Verdon?
Is it Blue Valentine?
But nobody really saw that compared to like Brokeback and this. And
That's a really good question. Should we take a look?
is it Fablemans?
I feel like it was that Blue Valentine kind of era. That's when she had established herself as like she can be in any movie she wants, basically. Which I think is where she wanted to get to. Her IMDb is really interesting. Like she's been in a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, she goes Synecdoche, New York, Wendy and Lucy, Blue Valentine, Shutter Island, Meek's Cut Off.
God, she was in
And
Shutter
then
Island.
she plays Marilyn Monroe. I think she was nominated for an Oscar for My Week with Marilyn, and then Manchester by the Sea. Take This Waltz, and then Manchester
Boy,
by the
that's
Sea.
kind of crazy that she was in Shutter Island because it's basically very similar plot line.
Yes. Yes.
Apex
in his
Mountain
arms,
for
yeah.
Manchester by the Sea. I'm going to say no question.
The town.
The actual town.
Sure.
Do you know it was called Manchester for years? And then they changed it. They somehow legally changed the name in the late 80s.
Was it because the
We always
Manchester-
called it Manchester, but then now it's Manchester
people
by
kept
the
showing
Sea.
up there being like, I heard Joy Division formed here? No?
Was that like to distinguish it from the city in England,
Yeah.
or was it to
I think
like
partly in-
tourism?
Well, I guess if
Yeah,
you put by the
'cause
sea in there, people are like, oh, let's see.
if you're doing a North Shore day trip and you were going down the coast, Gloucester was always the end, or you could go all the way down to Rockport. But
It's like Carmel, right? Isn't it Carmel by the Sea?
It is.
Yeah. Apex Mountain for rock bottom movies?
We'll find out.
I don't think so because I think it's a pretty funny movie.
And I think it's
Okay.
I think some of our other picks are less funny.
Okay.
Like there's some movies that we're gonna do that are like not funny at all.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Craig's like calling in sick. Lucas Hedges? No.
What is?
Oscar nominated.
Yeah.
Given where his career has gone
Yeah,
and what he's
you're
chosen
right.
to
It
do,
is.
it's pretty high up there.
It is. And it's also like if he doesn't take this movie and Chalamet gets it, does Lucas Hedges wind up being in Dune? You know, like
Oh.
do these guys
Wow.
just do a career swap?
Muad'Dib? Lucas Hedges?
Yeah,
I don't see it.
I don't buy it.
I don't see it.
Kyle
see
Chandler,
Dune yet?
no.
You done Dune?
Dune's on my list.
I think you would like it.
Kyle Chandler, no.
North Shore movies.
What's
This
up, what's
and-
up there?
It's
The
kind
Perfect
of
Storm?
it's kind of this versus Perfect Storm and Coda.
Bobby. Wish we could get some Perfect Storm.
Bobby.
people. Yeah.
Um,
Got these curtains.
Where's
new
Diane Lane
category.
from? Is she from New
Not
England?
Boston.
Okay.
Test drive another new category. I feel really good about this one. Cruiser Hanks.
Okay, there's a couple different ways to read this. Would in their pomp, like basically 37-year-old Cruisin' Hanks fit into this?
Listen, it's just called Cruiser Hanks. You can interpret it any way you
it
want.
would be Hanks. Hanks
For
would-
the lead role?
For the lead role, Cruiser Hanks.
But wouldn't you want?
We're going to keep track of this every Rewatchables and
I would
eventually have a
do Hanks over
scorecard
I
of Cruise versus
love
Hanks.
this idea.
Thank you.
Love it. But what if Cruise was young Patrick? Young Cruise.
Risky business Cruise.
All the right moves Cruise as
This is
Patrick.
why you're who you are.
That's pretty good.
Could he do it? He could do it. Outsiders Cruise. He could do it.
Wait.
Sometimes you just got to say, what the fuck? And have 2 girlfriends.
That's what I'm saying. Cock of the walk, hockey, 2 girlfriends.
Band. He would have learned to play guitar just
Playing
to do,
lead
2
guitar.
scenes.
Yeah.
How old is, which year Hanks are we going? Like, we're going like Philadelphia era Tom Hanks, like early 90s?
A little younger than that, right? But yeah, that era. You'd have to adjust it a little bit.
Like
Early teenage Cruise is really good.
he would crush it.
But I also think
but
Hanks would have been a
Hanks-
great lead. Not a great
But
Joe.
the category
Hanks
is
would have been a great
Cruise
Joe.
or Hanks, and it's for the lead part.
Well, who's the
So
lead?
sadly,
I guess it is Casey Affleck.
yeah. So I'm going to say
Is it-
Hanks.
you're even though the idea that I
that
gave
was
you
from
was
the
really
reader.
strong.
No, the
Okay.
idea you gave, you had a good end around,
Okay.
but it was Cruise or Hanks for the
Okay.
lead role.
All right. So 1 point Hanks in the
Craig, are you good with
lifetime
Cruise?
ruling.
Cruise losing to Hanks in that one?
For the lead, yes, but I love that idea too.
Good category.
Cruise or Hanks. Wow. I'm trying to think of what would be the funniest movie to do that for. Like Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Like-
Boys of the Hood. Parasite would be funny.
yeah.
Something from this movie, a name from this movie, racehorse, rock band, wrestler, or fantasy team name. Stentorian wins because it actually was a rock
That's
band.
it. Yeah.
But
But Stentorian's a great name for a horse.
Stentorian's good. Yeah, Stentorian can kind of
What's
work
the boat?
for
Claudia
anything.
Marie.
Claudia Marie.
And that's their mom.
Love that reveal too when they show the
So good.
headstone. Yeah, it's great writing.
All right, so pick a nits. No Packy store is open at 3 a.m. in Massachusetts.
I don't really know what that is.
It's
It's like where he
basically-
goes to buy beer.
Yeah.
But like what is it? It's not
It's a package
7-Eleven.
store. It's where you get like
Yeah.
takeout.
Call it Packy store.
Okay.
But it's like,
So it's not
it's
a
kind of pre
24/7.
7-Eleven. It's fine. You definitely find them in the kind of little further away from Boston, Massachusetts. They'll have stores like that or little gas stations combined with stuff, but they're all closed after
Okay.
11. You're
Okay.
not buying anything from them.
Yeah.
So little
It's
end
tough.
around on that one.
Got it. Can't chase the night.
Can't you?
Did we need a scene where they go to a bees game?
I got. Yeah, I did. I definitely felt like there was like much more to do with the hockey stuff.
We didn't see Joe and Lee really click too.
So maybe they click at a bees game.
Well, they click when they're out on the boat with young Patty.
But that's showing us that Joe would choose Lee to take care of
But he's-
Patrick.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we don't, I mean,
Okay.
this is, and you can count on me, one of the
So,
great brother-sister movies,
We
right?
didn't really
This is
talk
something
about
he does.
this earlier, but one of the things that was really interesting when I was reading Lonergan interviews is, people are like, "Is this about guilt?" And he's like, "Well, it is. It's about grief." And at one point, he's like, "But this movie's also about loyalty,
Mm.
and about how
Mm.
loyalty is strange. Like, what do we decide that we owe people? Like, and is it because you have the same last name, or is it just because you're their friends? And at the end, he winds up being adopted by George. There's a financial incentive, but there is also like a sense of community. And I guess like the thing that's kind of cool is that Joe saves Lee's life after the fire. Like he basically clearly props him up and like gets him the furniture and stuff like that. I really like the idea that like there can be loyalty without there necessarily being chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. You guys don't know. You don't have a brother.
We hung out with the Fennessey siblings. That
I
was
know.
really nice.
Yeah.
My brother is
Nice
the
group.
best. Yeah. My brother would definitely not leave me in charge of his kids, though.
My wife had that as a nitpick that he didn't tell Lee ahead of time that he was going to be the guardian
Well,
for the
he's
kid.
doing it because it's
And I was like, well, the reason he didn't do
He's
that
trying to
was
bring
because
him
he
back
knew
to
Lee.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he knew
Yeah.
Lee would say
Yeah.
no to that.
the ultimate same game parlay. He's like, I'm betting Patty that this guy's gonna fucking
With the Rockets to make the playoffs
Yeah.
at plus 550. Why did Joe pick a burial plot that was frozen for 3 months
Isn't
a
that
year?
just Massachusetts? I also think it's like
Is
very,
this a thing? Like if you
I don't
die in
know,
December
I
in
never heard of it.
Massachusetts?
I was like, this is like, if not biblical, like it's almost like out of Russian literature,
It is,
where it's
yeah.
like we have to wait for the earth to thaw, but when the earth thaws, I will thaw.
yes,
You know?
yeah. That's a very writerly
Yeah.
playwright convention that he's got in the movie. That's same with the ball, like the ball being thrown away, and then instead of letting it go, he goes and he catches and he grabs the ball and he brings it back.
He's
He's
just leave it.
I'm
He's
not
like,
going to give up.
"Don't
I'm not
leave
going to
it,"
give
yeah.
up on you. He does that.
This is like a really hardcore nitpick, but Manchester is nicer than it's a little less blue collar than depicted in this movie.
Yeah, he said I don't think I ever went there, but like he says it's like it has like a lot of different character because it's like in the summer it's very rich,
Yeah.
in the off season it's more working
It's
class.
a pretty upscale
Okay.
town. The last one I had was, again, we made a good case for how there's stuff intentionally left out that actually helps the story. With that said, a flashback scene with drunk Gretchen Mol would have been amazing.
Yeah.
And I kind of
We
wish it was
get
in here.
one of her laid out on the couch.
That's
But
that's the only thing that really indicates that she's got some.
Yeah.
Although they've got no patience for her when Joe's getting the diagnosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're just like, "Will you relax?
Yeah.
Please stop." So she seemed like she was maybe a handful.
Let her cook. Let Gretchen cook for one
We should
scene.
advocate for doing Rock Bottom Month to have directors go back and like do director's cuts of like now with more bottom seven added scenes
double
of
bottom.
absolutely harrowing shit. Like
Yeah. You just reminded me that the movie Seven would be pretty good for
Yeah.
Rock Bottom Month. We've obviously
Yeah.
already done that, but that's not a movie
Well,
that ends
maybe
very
we'll do it
happily.
again. You have any pick and knits, Chris?
not really. No.
Okay.
I'm hung up on Patty just not giving Lee a fucking break.
Would you give your come on.
I can't go back to
16-year-old
being
Sean?
16. I mean, I wouldn't give you a break today.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
His two girlfriends would find out about each other immediately.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's a good nitpick.
No
Well,
way you
she
can pull it
knows.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Town's too
Sandy
small.
knows.
She says it at the end, but it's not working.
Also,
she seems to be like a little bit more okay with that lifestyle. I don't get the impression that Sylvie would have appreciated the two timing.
Yeah. These kids aren't
Good
on
call,
Instagram
Craig.
in 15.
Early.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
Yeah,
would be. Yeah.
Early Instagram, but you have it.
Yeah.
definitely. Not that early. I had Instagram in like 2010.
Yeah.
2011.
I was trying to think for girls. Yeah, I guess my daughter was 11. Yeah, I guess.
Huge missed opportunity when you asked the Dune 2 question to drop a Dune 2 chicks at the same time joke right there.
I love that tweet. It's
It's
amazing.
one of the best.
Is this movie better with Wayne Jenkins, Danny Trejo, Sam Jackson, J.T. Walsh, Byron Mayo, Harley Mays, evil laughing Ramon Raymond, or Philip Baker Hall?
It's actually, this list is getting so long, but I have to add
I
another name.
cut some people.
I have to add another name.
Who?
And would it be better if Sergeant Dignam from The Departed was the hockey coach? Oh, you think you're Sean fucking Thornton? You think you're an enforcer playing for the Bees? You up there with your little girlfriend playing hide the calzone?
Let's add him.
You
Captain
dropping your
Dignam.
ass?
That's a great one.
Dignam.
Love that guy.
You're in the big bad Southie projects with your daddy the fucking donkey.
You lace curtain motherfucker.
Should Chris from the town be added to that category? Maybe it should just be all fictional characters. We just lose Danny Trejo. We lose everybody. Just one Oscar. Who gets it? I would say Lonergan.
Yeah, he did.
Not Michelle?
Well, Affleck won and Lonergan won. So we got it basically. Those are our two choices.
Just saying we could go revise our choices.
Tate Donovan.
You're going to take Viola Davis's Oscar for Fences when fucking tears and snot are
Classic.
coming out of her face?
Maybe this film really was about race, Chris.
It just became.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, let's give it to Lonergan.
Fences is a good Hanks or Cruise.
Fences, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to go Hanks there.
Just one Oscar. Who gets it? We did it. We did not do probably unanswerable questions. Did Stentorian ever put out an album?
No, but I do
hope
think they
not.
play a couple parties, and that's where the girls find out about each other.
Mm.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
so that could be the Andy and Red
Ziwandair,
Ziwandair. What
yeah.
happened the next day?
That about
The
how
two girls
Patty
fighting
winds
at a
up having to
Stentorian
fucking
party.
stay on that boat
Yeah.
all summer because those girls are hunting for him.
Did you talk about Patty's issues with the condom? Seemed to be like that's almost like a joke from 1987
Is that
to me.
supposed to be also like
Yeah,
a
that
little
was-
bit of a like he has no parental guidance?
Right.
Like, he's like, yeah,
Oh.
I talked to my dad about it, but like he's not being raised, you know?
So you sat down with your father and had a long conversation about how to apply a condom?
I can promise you I've not had that combo
I was
with my
23
son.
years old.
Should I be talking to my son about that?
That's maybe for the mailbag.
This is a question
That's
for
rock bottom month for Bills.
it's right now. Probably an answerable question just for Sean. Why is Matthew Broderick so weird in every fucking movie, really, for like 15 years? How did this become Matthew Broderick's career?
So
him just playing weird side characters. This was Ferris Bueller.
I know.
He, in Election and in You Can Count on Me, in a very small window, plays like two of the most like sniveling, awful, take advantage of your female counterpart in a movie characters. And it felt like at the time, he was like, I'm going to completely subvert what you think I'm going to do. I'm not cool Ferris Bueller anymore. I'm a character actor, and I'm going to take these parts. Fast forward 15 more years. I don't know why he's still doing those parts, but he seems to have settled on this strategy. I don't know. Maybe he thinks it's funny.
Is he just furious that he didn't get Ice Storm and that Kevin Kline got his part? And he's just like, I'm just going to be trying to make that up for the rest of my life.
Great question. I think being married to Sarah Jessica Parker means that he can do whatever he wants. He's on the stage. Like on the stage, he still does.
Yeah.
You know, he's in the producers, for Christ's sake. Like that's huge. And he's able to be the star of the show. I think with movies, he's like, I just like to fuck around and play these like little snivelly little dweebs.
I don't get it. Obviously, I had to research what Celtics Mavs game that was.
Yeah, that's Isaiah Thomas is featured, right?
Yep, November 18th, 2015. Celtics lost 106-102.
Wow.
Dirk had 23, Isaiah had 19, and Jared Sullinger with a double-double, 18 and 12.
Sully.
Yeah. That 2016 team ended up being inspired. Yeah, he got hurt. He had a bad back. Best double feature choice for this movie, I would say You Can Count on Me.
Very good.
Start with that, then finish with this.
Good Will Hunting is an interesting one. Because they're similar worlds.
I'm going to throw Shutter Island out there.
Sure.
I thought you would have said The Town.
No.
I liked your Andy and Red Zawatney award, so we'll go with that. What piece of memorabilia would you want from this movie? Probably nothing.
Well, you'd like the boat, right?
The boat would be cool.
If it's just the memorabilia, you don't have to invest.
A reader had a suggestion that we should...
If you could change it to Isaiah Thomas is the name.
No, we should only pick memorabilia that can fit through a door. Because we always pick the car.
Okay. Yeah. The fireplace screen?
I like a lot of Casey Affleck's
What's that? It's the fireplace screen from Manchester by the Sea.
A lot of Lee's sweatshirts are pretty cool to me.
His sweatshirts.
Yeah. Oh, he does have some cool
And he's got
clothes.
the Dugout Cafe shirt that he wears like in every scene. Yeah.
The Coach Finstock Award Best Life Lesson. Sometimes you can't beat it. You just can't.
You can't bring a distraction to the ice. What if I was just like, did this entire pod, I just insisting that this is a hockey movie?
Do you think you'd be a good hockey coach?
This is about a great hockey player who got distracted.
You know, Chris fantasizes about coaching our kids in soccer. This is like what he really wants for the world.
He
wants to be able
differently?
to. That's Chris fantasizes about being a soccer coach.
Like
for
being
our
like a
kids.
10-year-old soccer coach?
I want to be like the Jose Mourinho of Sean's kid. Yeah. Just like setting her up for success.
And our friends too.
Yeah.
All of us who have little kids. Did you ever want to be the guy who's like, I'm running this club, I'm running this team for your kids?
I tried my daughter's school. I wanted to be the 8th grade basketball coach for the boys. And I was like, this is fair because she's on the girls' side and they wouldn't let me do it.
I would have gone to every game. I honestly would.
I really wanted to do it. I was like this, but they had a rule that the coach had to work for the school, but I was ready to do it.
That was Ringer Days. Ringer Days?
Oh, yeah.
It
That was
really
mid-2010s.
cool if you had then gotten a job coaching against Ben to teach him. Maybe you'll learn something if I beat your ass every time we play.
That's a sports movie idea right there. That's
I was so
funny.
fired up to do it too.
And they were just like, absolutely not.
The Rewatchables probably never happens. I was like, I can't. Got a game.
Yeah.
We're playing Turning Point at
Sean and I would
4:30.
be without.
It's a vicious turning point. Yeah.
We're just in fucking 8th grade basketball being like, great call, Bill.
Yeah.
What an ATO.
Well, remember I took you guys to Zoe's 5th grade game that time?
Yeah.
It was super fun.
They do.
For
It
sure.
was
But I
fun.
like the older ones. Lonergan winning the movie.
I guess so. I made that speech about how it's okay to only make 4 movies, but man, I would just love to see a movie by him soon. Wouldn't that be great?
Maybe he's where. Hey, there's no way he's done.
I don't know. Jerry, she got all that Succession money. He may be living high on the hog right now.
What do you got, Craig?
I had seen this movie. I saw it the year it came out. And I think it was way better the second time around when you know what's coming because then you can appreciate and sit back and look at everything else. There's so much dread the first time around that it's like such a tough watch, and you come out of it just going like, my God, that's the saddest movie I've ever seen. But the second time around, I liked it so much more because, I just appreciated the filmmaking so much more. It's so simple and very well paced. It's really well edited. The woman who edited Oppenheimer, Jennifer Lane.
Oh, Jennifer Lane did this.
Yeah,
And she did.
You kind of just can't look away from this movie. It's so slow and so quiet, and yet I found myself just like sitting there with like my arms crossed, just like quietly staring at this movie for 2 hours, which is incredible. I think it's a 10 out of 10 of a movie.
You think you'll ever watch it again?
Probably not.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny is like if you removed the 3 most devastating scenes from this movie, it's like, and it came out today, it'd be like one of the top 3 funniest movies of the year. Like this movie is like funnier than like Ricky Stenicki.
Yeah.
It feels like those like Outside Providence style, like coming of age movies minus the mega tragedy.
Yeah, you just pull those 3 scenes out and it's Lee and Pat. This is a comedy.
Yeah. That's kind of how the movie is sold a little bit in the trailer. I don't know if you guys rewatched the trailer. But like there's a middle part of the trailer that's just like
funny stuff.
What's the Peter Gabriel song that's in every trailer? Salisbury Hill. It sounds like it should be set to Salisbury Hill, and they're like fighting in the.
It's like I can't get in unless you unlock the door.
Yeah.
Should trailers be a rewatchables category?
Oh, I'm upset. We were just talking about this. I'm obsessed with them now. 90s
Somebody
and 2000s
suggested
We were just talking
trailers.
about the new Alien trailer.
Like,
and how
rate
it's
the trailer.
You can't have a bad Alien trailer. There's just like everyone. You're just like home run.
I was telling him I went to the New Beverly and they showed the trailer for Up Close and Personal, the Robert Redford, Michelle Pfeiffer movie. And I was like, I remember that movie being perfectly fine. But after I saw the trailer, I was like, let's fucking go. Like, I am ready to watch this
Because it
right
had
now.
the In a World.
It had the In a World guy. It was awesome. Yeah, they used to be so good.
Yeah, maybe we should add trailers.